Is this meeting being recorded? Yes.
Yes.
This meeting being recorded. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters and guests. This meeting of online presenters has now begun. Guests, please note that in order to be a member of our club, you must be a current or a former active member of Toastmasters International and have completed at least 6 speeches from either the traditional or pathway programs. Or you must have substantial, relevant presentation experience that you demonstrate in a 3 to 5 minute speech delivered during one of our club meetings. All requests for membership are subject to board approval. If you have not already done so, please change your panel to ensure it shows your name and role, if you have one. Right-click and select Rename to do so. We have members and often guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, at a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note that we will be recording the meeting. Your video, audio contributions may be used for club marketing purposes. Also, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Today's theme is our connection to food. With that, please welcome our Senior Club Officer of the Day, VP Krishn Ramchurn.
Thank you, Mr. Soderstadt Arms, and all the best with your evaluation, Toastmaster Andre. Ladies and gentlemen, and my dear guest, yes, our connection with food, have no idea what's waiting for us, but I'm already starting to get hungry. Without further ado, because we do have a lot of guests, and our Vice President Public Relations has done an amazing job to introduce each and every one of you to us. I'd like to inform you that because of time, we are going to keep the networking at the end of the meeting. Any guest who wants to stay on to know more about the club, you're more than welcome to do that. But here to get the party started, please put your hands together and applause or wave crazily for our debut Toastmaster of the session, Lucas Calafel. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. It is with pleasure that I serve as the Toastmaster of the Day and introduce the theme of our meeting, our connection to food. I thought about this particular theme primarily because I was hungry at the time when I was thinking of what the theme of the meeting should be. But secondly, because I was thinking about food. Food does not just sustain us. Food communicates culture, history, and promotes togetherness. I recently saw a show called Chef's Table on Netflix, in which this season focused on chefs specializing in the art of barbecue. The show featured an 85-year-old pitmaster from Texas, still performing the hard labor which comes from barbecuing and everything that goes into it. However, her barbecue brings the community together as early as 8 o'clock in the morning to have some amazing barbecue. And I'm sure that this kind of togetherness happens all across the world around different kinds of food. Food has a story, from the ingredients to the people or person preparing it, and finally to those who enjoy it. What does food mean to you? Now, before we move on to the prepared speech section of our meeting, I would like to introduce our functionaries, or in the spirit of this meeting's theme, our sous chefs who will support the success of our meeting. With that, let's begin with our timer, Amelia.
Hello everyone, I'm your timer for this evening. Being on time is key to Toastmasters Leadership Development Program. Every speaker or everybody on the agenda has got time allotted, minimum and maximum time. So when they reach the minimum time, I'll change my background to a green lighting to prompt them And then when they are halfway there, it will go to amber. And on the, when their time is almost up, I'll change my background to red, and 30 seconds after that, they should stop talking. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Amelia. Next, let's hear from our counter, Nikenji.
Greetings once again, fellow Toastmasters and guests. My duties this evening are to make note of the ahs, ums, you knows, and any other inappropriate verbal habits by speakers, for which I will give a report at the end of the meeting. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have our grammarian, Sarah.
Mr. Toastmaster, tonight I will be your grammarian and I'll be looking for the word of the day usage. Our word of today is scrumptious. And scrumptious is an adjective meaning very pleasing, especially to the senses. Delightful, excellent, delicious, delectable. And an example would be, he prepared a scrumptious casserole, or she wore a scrumptious satin gown. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's hear from our watcher, Brian.
Thank you very much. My name is Brian David Crawford, but a lot of people call me BDC. I have the very stalker-ish role of making sure that I watch you while you participate in this meeting. I want to make sure that you're exhibiting good body language to show that you're listening. I want to make sure that you have a nice background, something that's better than this, and that you have a smile on the face to encourage all the speakers to do better and to give their best effort. Back to you, Lucas.
Thank you, Brian. We're going from our watcher to our chat monitor, Monica.
As chat monitor tonight, I will be watching all the conversations that we have over in chat, and there's already been several over there tonight. So just keep your eye on it, and let's have some good conversations, and I will report out at the end, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Monica. And last but not least, we have our vote counter, Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. So as vote counter, I will be accepting your votes at the end of each segment. Why? Because, hey, we vote for the best speaker, best table topic speaker, and best evaluator. And I'll share that at the end with the Toastmaster of the session to announce. So please send your votes to me after each segment at the end. Over to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Christian. Now we have arrived to the first segment of our meeting, Prepared Speeches. After 2 years on the International Board of Directors, our first speaker will share the change management plan and outcome for the governance of online Toastmasters clubs. Giving her speech, Changing Online Clubs, join me in welcoming our charter member and distinguished Toastmaster, Carol Prahinski.
Unmute. Yeah, thank you, Lucas. Great to be here. And I just want to say that it was really beautiful that my members of this club asked me to speak on this topic, which is change. Change as it relates to the last couple of years that I've been on the board, and now I'm back as a regular member. And I just want to say thank you for asking. So when we look at the change of my learning on the board, it is a huge process. And one of the most significant part is I'm not allowed to talk about things that we decided. I'm not allowed to talk about the background information or who voted for what. So I have to keep out of that. But I will share some general conclusions that were talked about in the board briefing, which we did talk about a few weeks ago. But I want to give you some background, because as I work on the dynamic leadership, this project specifically is about change. How do we implement change? It's not easy, right? Because we got people out there that resist it. Dang 'em. You know, dang, let's go ahead and say, let's make the change. No, no, no. We have people that say, no, I don't think that's a good enough change, or I want to do something different entirely. And so we say, please step up to the counter and let's make change, but how do we go about implementing it? So I thought I'd walk through with you some of the factors that come into play. Now, when I stepped onto the board, I am a charter member of this club, and this goes back a number of years. And when I went through the process with David Carr starting this club, one of the things that came out really quickly was this is a different ball of wax. Being an online club, online membership, it's a whole nother landscape. In addition, the governing documents set us up differently than the other clubs. It's not just another club, it is different. So let me go ahead and talk to you about the other types of clubs. We have corporate, community, and those get talked a lot about. We have college and university clubs, prison clubs, a small group predominantly in the United States. We have specialty clubs, and there's some that are so much fun. I just feel like I want to join them right away. They have meetings about food and wine and comedy and some really cool stuff. Then we have the advanced clubs, which I highly recommend. I'm a club member of many advanced clubs, and I just love it. So what does all this have in common? Well, online isn't necessarily part of it. Historically, Toastmasters has been face-to-face and in person, and so we're having these conversations as it relates to specifically conversations. And so we can pick up the entire body language. We can pick up, I wonder what they're thinking. I see them looking off into the distance, and it's very different. So one of the things here on the right-hand side I'm talking about is, what are the formats? Historically, we have the in-person format, which is down at the bottom of the list, but I got all excited about this online format because this is the future, as Elaine said prior to the meeting started. This is the future. And then they had this thing called hybrid. Well, they didn't actually call it hybrid. They called it meetings that have, let's see, how did they phrase it? Meetings that have at least 50% of the members meeting face-to-face, and the other portion was meeting online. They didn't call it hybrid. And where did the 50% come from? So as a member, just a regular member, I'm looking at this saying, why are they making these distinctions? Why aren't they including us as just a regular other type of club? Why are we off to the side? So that's where I stepped into the board. And again, I'm not allowed to tell you a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but I will tell you that I did have some preferences of making change. And the change that I wanted to see was that I wanted online to be regular. And instead they called regular clubs was the people that met in person or face-to-face. And I said, no, all of these clubs are regular depending on the format that we happen to be operating. So one of the things that I noticed, I went to visit different districts, and one of the district club growth directors did not even mention hybrid clubs or online clubs to a potential organization, corporate organization, that wanted to start a brand new club. And a lot of their people were remote. It happened to be a technology company. Well, why is this club growth director not even mentioning these alternatives? It's because our system wasn't set up right. It wasn't set up so that people would be wanting, this is district leaders wanting to be able to do that. They had incentives to set up in-person clubs. And I said, that's not right, because Toastmasters, we do need to have this online environment. It is part of our future. The other thing I noticed was the what I call the ugly stepchild. We were called, I'm going to say, abnormal. We were irregular because regular clubs were in person. That meant the rest of us were irregular. I know the people in Key West like to be known as abnormal, but a lot of us like to be just part of the group, so that was an area for concern for me. Now, so I established this vision that this online club environment would be considered normal, just normal. Let's get us part of that normal. And how do we get full support behind that? There's, like I said earlier, resistance, the resistance to change. Let's go ahead and talk about that. And I hope you appreciate my little Barbie doll. So the resistance to change is that people are saying, why do we need to? Now, pre-COVID, it was clear that this was not a priority. I think you agree with me, right? It just wasn't a priority. Now, after COVID started occurring, and I have to say that as a board member, we got involved fairly early in comparison to many people in North America. We got involved when China was affected, and China was affected pretty early. And so we had conversations about what to do about the Chinese clubs and the members of those clubs. How can we take care of those individuals? As we delegated and determined what choices we had, thankfully I had a background that dealt with online, and I was able to bring in some of my knowledge to guide the organization. All of us had knowledge, but to guide us to say, these are some choices that we have, but we will have to suspend some of the current governing documents. Now, when we talk about some of the resistance is this is different. And if they don't have experience with online, nowadays everybody does, but at the time, a lot of people didn't have experience with online clubs. It's a very small number of people that are involved. And so they said, this is different. I'm not sure it's the right thing for our future, because I think face-to-face or in-person meetings are the best choice for us. And so to get them to go past it, we had to have COVID happen, right? So when we take a look at change management, we have to overcome that resistance. And without COVID, I don't think the board would have made the decisions that it made, the changes that were able to be implemented at the most recent board meeting. And just in summary, let me talk about what the changes were. We had the before, where we had regular clubs and then hybrid clubs, which weren't called hybrid, they were called something else. But then we had this online undistricted clubs, and that's us. We're in that last category. It's a very small group, and people, the district, world headquarters said, if you want to recharter, if you want to change between one of these three, you have to recharter, and there's a fee for that. It's like $125 US, but you have to start over as a brand new club. Well, clubs didn't want to do that. That wasn't attractive at all, yet they wondered if we should be switching over. Should I switch to when I say they had to pay a recharter fee, it's if you wanted to switch to an online club, or if an online club wanted to switch back to one of these other alternatives. Okay, so now, effective in August, the board of the directors has passed that we now have technically these 4 different types of clubs, but they call them 3. In-person, which is now no longer called regular, woohoo, we're just another type of club. Hybrid, online, and online undistricted. Now, online is because districts can now charter new clubs that fit within a district. So that's an option for districts, so that they will promote it and support these online clubs. Now, to switch to become one of these other formats, it has to have 50% of the members voting in support of it. So we no longer have to pay a charter fee. We no longer have to throw out our previous charter and start with a new charter. We now have a lot more flexibility in the event that the members of that club want to shift between the format of that meeting. So when we think about changing online clubs, I want to say that I'm very proud to have been a board member and to be involved with the changes that have occurred at the board level. This has been an honor to be part of it. I also want to say that your voices are heard, not just by me, but by the World Headquarters staff and by the board of directors. So, and with that, I'm going to say change occurs sometimes at a slow pace and sometimes at a rapid pace, but being prepared for that change is one of the things that makes us ready for the future. Madam, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Carol. This is all very complex, and it changes, and it can go in many directions. So thank you for sharing with us the complexities of online clubs and the direction that it's going to go. Now, our next speaker will be completing in the presentation mastery pathway, evaluation and feedback, the second speech portion. This Toastmaster has been with the club since May of this year. Her speech title is Responding Without Understanding. Please welcome and give a warm virtual applause emoji to Lieceng Zhu.
Thank you for the introduction, Lucas. With responding without understanding, we all do that. We all sometimes pretend we got it while we don't, to a situation or in a conversation, for whatever reason. Some of us have developed a habit of using certain words repeatedly under such circumstances, like, that's interesting, that's okay, fine, fantastic, etc. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. This is my third speech, and I suppose incorporate the feedback from my previous speech. I was so fortunate to have two excellent evaluators, Dr. Michael Alexander and Mr. Jim Barber. They suggest me to use visual aid and also gesture to enhance my speech. Thank you, gentlemen. 谢谢. I used to say that's interesting a lot, especially during the first few months after I came to this country. That time, I hardly understand 50% of the conversation. It's not possible for me to repeatedly ask people to repeat every other words they have mentioned. So I'll just say, that's interesting, and that is interesting, to almost everything and everybody. It worked, and I was scrumptious at some time. When September 11 happened, I was a graduate student at South Dakota State University. That morning, about 10 o'clock, I sat in the classroom waiting for the professor to start the class. But it was strange, the professor, he just stood there, around by a few students. They just talked. 30 minutes into the classroom, in the class time, they're still just talking. I was frustrated. I paid attention, and then some words come to my ear, and which made no sense at all, like fire, smoke, jumping, screaming, airplane, etc. Wow, they must be talking about a movie. That must be an extremely interesting movie. So interesting that drove people nuts. A professor forgot to teach, and student forgot why they came to the class, driving for 1 hour at all. Finally, the class was over, and before I left the classroom, in my last attempt to understand why I wasted an hour in the classroom doing nothing, I asked the guy sat next to me, what they talk about? He said something, but I have no clue of. To reply, I just nodded and said, that's interesting. That's not, he snapped at me. I was like, why are you so rude? What's the big deal? Feeling hurt, I left the classroom without another word. And only in that evening, I found out what really happened in the very morning of September 11 in 2001 from a Chinese student. He knew it because he watched the evening news. I felt so shocked, and meantime, so stupid. That's what they were talking about. It's not a movie, it's a reality. A new reality that's beyond our wildest imagination. And what did I say? I said that was interesting. Oh, what a stupid thing I said. No wonder that student yelled at me, and he must thought that I was a heartless foreigner, while it's really just my mouth. No, it's not even my mouth's fault. It's the bad habit of me normally just respond without understanding to a situation or in a conversation. That moment, I felt miserable in a miserable world. And today, our world is still miserable. Look at the mess we are in, partly because of the disconnection between our understanding and our responding. We've been so busy and so rushed to get things done each and every day. And we no longer have time to do the due diligence and to have patience to listen to each other and to understand what is really happening. And our communications become just words, and loud words, and floating from one big mouth to another without realizing that sometimes even our own mouths can fail to represent our own hearts. Worse still, we started to ignore facts and science, and we make critical decisions based on fantasy, alternative fact, and sometimes even agenda. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lieceng. Okay, now due to technical complications, I guess I can say, our third speaker will not be able to give their speech. With that said, I will ask our timer to give a timer's report. Amelia, if you're there, we will need a timer's report as our third speaker will not be speaking at this meeting.
I believe that Amelia is speaking, but her microphone's not working, Mr. Toastmaster. So perhaps if Amelia were to put the report into the chat for the moment.
Yeah, I believe we're going to have to settle for that. Amelia, please put the times for our two speakers in the chat, and based on that, we will determine who is eligible to be voted on. Okay, while we are waiting for Amelia to type that into the chat, I would like to introduce our topics master. Table topics is the portion of any Toastmasters meeting where Toastmasters can practice their impromptu speaking skills, be on the spot, and try to give an eloquent answer to a random question. Now, I would like to introduce our topics master for our meeting, Trisha.
Hello, everybody. Yes, Topic Masters. I saw the theme for tonight, so I was excited, all about food. So I definitely have some questions about food. That's something we can all relate to. And as the meeting got going, I kind of added to the ideas, so I hope that's okay. So just hint, most of the questions will pertain to something we can relate to about food. So I did do a little picking on who didn't have any roles also. So let's see how good I did. So I'm going to choose Roxanne. Are you available? Would you like to be our first chosen Topic Master speaker tonight? And the question is about food. So we'll make it easy for a start so you can add as much detail as you want. What is your favorite type of food? You can describe it as a meal, as a type, breakfast, lunch, dinner, how much are you eating out? You know, however you want to take this. Your favorite type, you can say desserts, fruits, vegetable, meat, dishes, however you want to explain it, and why.
My favorite type of food? Snacks. Why? You can get away with anything. You can have them anytime. You can have them anywhere. Typically, you can even eat them with your hands. And snacks, all encompassing. Though it's my favorite type of food, my favorite snack, I could say grapes, but they don't travel well. Grapes, you can't stick them in your handbag and walk around with those. No. So you can go with something else. Popcorn? Nobody wants to see that. Trust me. I saw you when I did it. So no. But because snacks, you ever ate kale out of the bag? Shredded kale and just with your fingertips? Snack. You might call it a salad. Chop up some grape tomatoes in that, toss it in, shake the bag. You can still walk around with that and snack. Ice cream cone. Yep, it's a snack. You might call it dessert. I call it a snack. Why would something that allows you to capture everything? You ever had a bowl of soup as a snack? I have. That's right, I have a bowl of soup. You might call that a meal. Not when you're having it in between your breakfast and your lunch. It's a snack. That's my favorite type of food, and that's why. Anything, anytime, anywhere. Back to you, Topics Master.
Awesome. Thank you. Now you just made me hungry. All right. How about another volunteer?
Have a snack.
Yeah, have a snack after we're done. How about Emily? Miss Emily, are you available? I saw you. Hi, Emily.
Sure.
All right. Awesome. So do you like to eat alone, or do you like to eat with your family or as a group? If you could kind of describe it and break it down like, oh, this is what I like, how I like to do it, and why. All about food.
All about food. Well, I have a farmer's market background, so I love farmer's markets. I love to cook for my family. I love to cook with my family. And I grew up in a family that cooks for large numbers of people. So I have, when my kids were in sports, my husband and I would cook for 40 people. We would take 40 people camping and make meals for 40 people. My cookbooks have the recipes all scaled up, and how you make them. We would freeze them in the freezer, and then you unpack them on day 1 and they're ready on day 2, all this kind of thing. And don't forget to add the lime and sugar dressing. We love to cook internationally as well. Everyone else was throwing out international cookbooks, and I bought a series of international cookbooks which had one whole book for all of India. They had one whole book for Eastern United States, and they had one whole book for the continent of Africa. I don't understand how they divided these up. It was from the 1950s. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I love to cook out of those and look to see what everyone is eating around the world. So I love to cook for small groups and cook for big groups, and I love to eat international food from all around the world. Back to you, Madam Table Topics Leader.
Awesome. Thank you. That made me more hungry. Awesome. I agree. International foods. Perfect. Dr. Tasha, I saw you. Are you still with us?
I am here.
So hi. All right. Next question. Let's kind of take it a different turn here. What is the most unusual thing that you've ever had to eat? Where was it? Why? How did you make that decision? Just describe it for us.
So I'm very different from Emily in that I do not try new foods at all. I stick to Old Faithful. I stick to the things that I know. I am not a lover of cooking. So I recently got married, and my husband, I'm very fortunate for this. My husband loves to cook. So he's the chef in our family, and I just taste test his food, and I love the fact that he cooks and he enjoys it, and I enjoy eating it. The most unusual food that I've ever had was Mediterranean food. I tried falafel about a year ago, and I actually became addicted to it. And I would eat it every day for lunch. I'd go to there's a place in our area called Naf Naf, and they make the best falafel. And there's another place, I forget the name of it, but I used to work on the campus of Temple University, and there was a restaurant there that had that had really great falafel. So I eat falafel every day. My coworkers would laugh and say, "Oh, we already know where you're going. You're going over to get your falafel." I'd get falafel, hummus, rice, and chicken shawarma. So that's the widest I have gone in terms of eating food that I was unfamiliar with. But for me, falafel is my go-to food when I'm trying to change up my diet and do something different. Back to you, Madam.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I can relate to everybody that's spoken so far. I used to do a lot more cooking, and guess what? My son's the chef now. So the next person, how about Amelia Wood? Miss Amelia, oh, you're our timer. I'm sorry, I overlooked that. Forgive me. Chris Gould, you know she was with us. Chris, are you still with us? Did we lose Chris Gould? I don't see her.
I believe we did.
I can pick somebody else.
Chris is not there.
Okay, yeah, all right. Moving on. I think we have a Susan. Susan, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are, Susan. Hi, I didn't know your last name yet. Hello, Susan. Okay. One of two questions you can choose, okay? You can either answer number one, what was your favorite childhood meal? Maybe your mom made it, grandma, something. Or you could answer this question, how has your eating habits changed with COVID, when all the restrictions? So one or two.
Well, I'll answer the one to do with COVID. How has eating changed since COVID? Before COVID, I wouldn't say I ate out a lot, but probably a lot more than I realised. And one thing I really loved to do was go out for coffee, and I'd always be going out and having a latte. And that's the one thing that I couldn't do in COVID. And at first I really struggled with that, just that enjoyment of going out into a different environment and just having a coffee with a friend or even on my own. And the way around that was every time I went shopping, I'd buy an iced latte and I'd sit in the car park and drink my iced latte. And that was the closest thing I could get to sort of having that coffee break. And that, of course, it wasn't enjoyable because I just dashed around the supermarket in a panic with a mask on and gloves and fearful. And of course I had all the shopping there that I had to take home, but it was the closest thing I could get. But surprisingly, I don't know what's in those lattes, but I did lose weight over the lockdown. And my sister said, "Oh, you seem so much happier in lockdown." And the only thing that was different really, because obviously I'm cooped up and penned up, was those lattes. So I don't actually know what's in them. Maybe they're not as healthy as you think they are. You think you're just having a little latte, but maybe who knows what's in them. So since I'm now available to go out for a latte, I'm not really interested anymore in going out and having one. So, and I've decided those iced lattes are full of sugar, so I'm not even having those either. So it's been quite cost effective lockdown for me in terms of that, Madam Topics Master.
Thank you so much. Yes, I've saved money that way myself, make them at home. I'm going to give the same questions. Do I still have time to ask more questions? Who's keeping track of that?
This will have to be the last one.
Okay, then I'm going to pick a different topic if that's okay, because it's relevant to what we just went through, and that's the 9/11. So the question is, what does 9/11 mean to you? We are all in different places. Maybe you can describe where you were at the time and how you acknowledge or celebrate that every year, or however, hate to hear of any losses, or what your experience is with that. So how about Sarah Gao? Can you share with us what 9/11 means to you?
What a surprise, Tricia. I had no idea you would pick me.
Hello.
Here comes the surprise of table topics. 9/11. I remembered it was late in the evening. I was in my dormitory at my college, and I just came back and prepare and get ready to bed. And everyone in my dorm was staring at the TV. I asked, what happened? And then I saw this replay of the airplane fly into the two skyscrapers building. That was, I'm sure people in New York, people in the US felt completely different shock than people like me in China living on the opposite side of the planet. But I know right there, the world is going to be different, for sure. For me, at that moment, it was simple because I've always wanted to come to the US to study. And that won't be an option because no more visas will be granted. So that actually changed my path, and I went to study in Europe. But in the years follow, I've also seen globalization keeps moving on. And we enjoyed more than 10 years, more than a decade as a global society where people embraced diversity and we welcomed everyone with openness. So that's why it brings me to think right now when we look back to remember the day that changed the world forever. I can't help but think what COVID has done to us. Just like what we felt at 9/11, we felt people closing their heart. We feel countries protecting for themselves. We see people blaming at each other. But I still have hope. Just how we overcome from 9/11, I think we can overcome as a global society from COVID as well. Back to you, Tricia.
Thank you so much. And I know somebody else is keeping track of the timing with the table topics, and I tried to list the presenters in the chat box. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. So thank you, wonderful presentations. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Tricia. We're going to do a slight detour before we get to evaluations because our originally scheduled third speaker was able to resolve her technical issues, so she will give her speech. For our timer for table topics, go ahead and post how everyone did the table topics in the chat. And I would like to go ahead and introduce our third speaker to get the meeting moving. Since 1997, as an integrative health and wellness practitioner, coach, and holistic RN, Elaine Nieberding has been inspiring folks to use simple methods for self-care, self-discovery, and optimizing peak performance. From the Visionary Communications Pathway Level 1 project researching and presenting, Elaine will nudge you to up-level your self-care exploring Coca-Cola advertising and some familiar slogans. Here's Elaine Nieberding, your VP PR, with her speech, The Pause That Refreshes.
Greetings, my fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and of course our Toastmaster of the day, Lucas. So this is an interesting predicament I found myself in today. I've had to use what I teach others frequently, and especially within the last hour, especially within the last half an hour, because I went to load my backgrounds and everything went kaflooey. We live in interesting times where all kinds of predicaments are happening. We see the pain of the fires that are happening on the West Coast. We have political upheaval and discourse happening. And time again, what we actually have to do is find our way back to our center. So I've been teaching this health and wellness stuff for a good long while. And particularly in 2020, there have been 3 things that I have been encouraging people to do to very quickly come out of a state of pain, pressure, or panic and de-stress. And those 3 things are reboot with yawning. Yeah, some of you have seen me do speeches on that before, because it triggers the parasympathetic nerve system in the most quick way. In another Toastmaster group, I shared this other thing. Take a deep breath and then erase your overwhelming thoughts. But the most frequent thing that I've done is to remind people to refresh. Now, let me know, is that refresh sign backwards or looking right to you? Thumbs up if it's right, thumbs down if it's backwards. I want to know. It's thumbs up. Very good. Okay, so as I've been talking about refreshing with deep breathing, it's very often occurred to me, and I've probably said it in some of my presentations. Remember that old slogan from Coke, the pause that refreshes? How many of you remember or associate the pause that refreshes with Coke? Raise your hand. Some of you might not. You know I have age on a good number of you, but let me ask you, if you remember any Coke slogan at all, type it in the chat. As it turns out, Coca-Cola started advertising in 1886. And even in their earliest words that they were using, they were talking about refreshment. So when I've taught focused breathing, and I mentioned the pause that refreshes, I'm telling you, whenever you are in that observer state and notice, I'm getting stressed, I'm noticing, what can you do? You can consciously make the decision to take a couple of deep breaths. If you have more time, you can breathe longer. And I have this symbol up here because, why? We're spending a lot more time on our computers, and on every browser that's up there, there is that refresh sign. So folks, every time you see that, please remember the dictum that I'm telling you. When you notice you're stressed, take the pause that refreshes. In fact, let's just take a moment now and practice. Just take a deep breath in. Feel in all the way down to the belly, like a balloon, and then exhale. It makes a shift, taking that pause that refreshes with deep breathing. So I thought that was very interesting. In fact, you're not seeing the slide that I meant to have up. So you're going to see me tipping over sideways so you can kind of see one of the earliest versions of the pause that refreshes. This is from 1924 in Coca-Cola advertising. A little later on, I think it was sometimes in the 70s, there was a Coke slogan that said, have a Coke and a what? Have a Coke and a smile. This one. Have a Coke and a smile. So what we're actually going to do in a minute, I'm going to remind you another thing that you can do when you're taking the pause that refreshes. Add a smile to it. As a holistic nurse, I can also tell you it is scientifically and evidence-based shown to be that when you simply put your mouth into a smile position and hold it there, it starts releasing endorphins. So if you add your smile consciously to your deep breathing, you will even be amping up leveling your capacity to reconfigure. So I'm telling you once again, Coke, well, you might not want to make Coke the real thing because it's got so much sugar in our diet, and we've often been cutting out refined sugar like I have. But I want to remember you, do utilize some Coke. C, when you want C, calm. O, when you want optimism. K, when adding a little kindness with self-care would be a grand idea. And E, when you want to get back into an energetic state that is a part of your best presence. Do these things. Take the pause that refreshes. Add the Coke with a smile and see how much better you feel. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Elaine. Timer, please give me a thumbs up if Elaine's speech qualifies. Okay, all right, seems like she qualified. So that means that there are now 2 qualifying speeches for Best Speaker. So please send a private message to our vote counter, Christian, to vote on the Best Speaker. Your choices are Elaine and Lieceng. Now I'm going to move to our 3rd segment of our meeting, which is evaluations. And to kick off our evaluations for the meeting, let me introduce our general evaluator, Dr. Michael Alexander.
Thank you very much. We've had a very wonderful meeting, starting from the appetizer, which Elaine presented of each of our individual members, with all sorts of scrumptious descriptions of themselves, working all the way through interesting speeches, absolutely delectable table topics, and then I guess Elaine came back and provided us with dessert. So I've had a wonderful time, and I'm in California, so it's getting close to my dinner time. So without further delays, I'm going to base the meeting and go to our first evaluator. Who's our first evaluator? Someone's got it for me quickly here.
Marianne Grady.
Marianne, unless you want to change your name right now, as Elaine tried to, you'd go ahead and give our first evaluation.
Sure. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests, and Carol. Tonight, your speech was just a smorgasbord of information on a subject that's near and dear to all of our hearts, online clubs. I love that you shared the backstory and told us how there were things that you couldn't share with us, and you told us what you could share with us. This actually helped us look at you as a very ethical person, and that you would be more authentic, and you wouldn't seem like you were not being transparent by giving us that disclaimer up front. Your talk tonight was full of valuable information, and I appreciated that you shared with us about the problems, the resistance, and how the pandemic pushed TI's view into the future, which I'm very happy to hear that, and I think all of us were. I only have 2 suggestions for you. One of the things I noticed were that your gestures were kind of random and always the same, kind of just going out. My suggestion would be to plan your gestures a little better, because now that we're virtual, we do have to use them, and it's difficult to use them because when you go too fast, they blur, and when you have them near your face, they cover your face, and you just have a very small space to use. So planning them and putting them in frame would be very helpful to your speech. And finally, you used a phrase called ball of wax. And with an international audience, not everyone might understand what that means. So when you have, it's the old saying, know your audience. So I would say, perhaps say something like a different concept rather than a whole new ball of wax. Just to think about that. But no wonder our club wanted you to present this information to them, because your speech tonight was scrumptious. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much, Marianne. I hope the grammarian caught the fact that you started off with smorgasbord and went immediately to online. Nice piece of punning there. Our second evaluator is Rosanna, who will evaluate Lieceng's speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator. A pleasant good evening, good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Responding without understanding. Lieceng, your speech hit home to me because my favorite phrase is, "That's interesting." And now that you presented so much detail on that, I'm going to be very cautious of when I use that phrase, "That's interesting." Now, your objective today was to give a speech and utilize the tips and feedback you got from previous speeches in this particular speech. And based on what you said in your speech, I do feel as though you accomplished that goal. One of the things that you identified as feedback was using visual aids. And I noticed that as you did your speech, your background changed, that you shared the story about September 11th. You had the towers, you had the burning, and so you were able to tie in a background that fit your speech well. In addition to that, I noticed that you used body language. I was able to see your gestures all within the frame. So great use of your body in your speech. I also love the energy you gave during your speech. Your vocal variety, the energy. I was there with you in the story. I felt your emotions. I felt your feelings in that classroom. I felt the embarrassment you had when you used the phrase "out of turn." And like I said, it did help me to reflect. It is so easy for us to use phrases and terms just because we want to get through the conversation without being mindful of the impact it has during the conversation. There is one thing I do want to provide you as additional feedback as you go forward. I would like you to just slow down just a little bit so we can capture every single word you give. I don't want to miss any part of your stories as you go through. But outside of that feedback, wonderful presentation, great tips on us being able to communicate more effectively. And I look forward to seeing you speak again. Thank you, Mr. G.
Thank you very much. Very tasty response. I liked it a lot. I'm going to move on now to our third evaluator, providing an evaluation for Elaine's speech, Andre Smolko. Boy, I just butchered another name, but Andre, I think you know who you are.
Thank you, Mr. Evaluator. Fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, dear Elaine. Well, take a pause to refresh. What a wonderful speech. From the beginning, you outline the predicaments that we all face in our life. Then slowly, you move to a story of what you've been doing for many, many years of your life. Then you gave us an excellent examples how we all can just slow down, take a pause, and refresh our mind. I did it, I smiled, I follow your lead. You add the wonderful singing. This is exactly what I was looking for. Perhaps many members already know that Elaine loves singing, and guests as well will find out even more. Then the audience participation, 2, 3 times, and I was hoping to see more and more. And I was pulling my thumbs up, getting involved into your story. Overall, I followed your story all the way through, got some valuable tips, easy to use, that could enhance my and other fellow Toastmasters' well-being. At the same time, a few things I think your speech could be better if you take into account. One, I would say if you could give a 2 example from your career, at 1 negative example when, look, you tried and it didn't work, with when you were coaching people. And another example when someone just overachieved objects and goals in their life. Those positive examples would improve general understanding of your speech, I think. What I really like is that in the end, you give a powerful message. All your speeches, they concentrated on giving practical, valuable advice that we can all just go and do and apply it to everyday life, simply things to do. At the same time, I would love to see a bit more clear structure. For example, you could say, fellow Toastmasters, I'm going to tell you how you can improve your life. And then you tell your story. In the end, with more powerful message, you could really make much more difference to everybody's life, us. Elaine, I really, really enjoyed your speech and the singing and the powerful presentation. Overall, with few tweaks, and bearing in mind, it took you only half an hour or an hour to prepare all that, I applaud you. I really applaud you. Look forward to seeing your speeches more. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much to all three of you. Really appreciate it. I will come back a little bit to this, but before I give my evaluation, well, my mother always taught me to make sure I ate everything on my plate before I left the table. So I'm going to move on and ask the yacht counter, the Kengate, if you would tell us how we did on that score.
Greetings, fellow Toastmasters and guests. This evening we had several repetitions of and, quite a bit of so this is something we definitely need to work on. We had some buts, some you knows, and some okays. Of this report, I have put it into the chat so that we can all be mindful of the areas in which we can work on. However, I strongly urge us to avoid those ands and so. We use them far too often. Over to you, GE.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And now for the Feast of Words, let's have our restaurant review from our Grammarian Sarah. Sarah, are you there?
Thank you, Madam, Mr. General Evaluator. Well, tonight on the use of our word of the day, which was scrumptious, we had two uses, Dr. Michael and Marianne. And then Dr. Michael also used the word delectable, which is also a meaning of scrumptious. Some good words that were used tonight in some of the speeches. I'd like to call attention to Lieceng's speech, where she painted some ideas in our minds. Words come to my ears, she used that phrase. And a new reality beyond our wildest imagination, she used that phrase. And she said, mouths fail to represent our own hearts. And I thought all of those were very, very good and brought words and brought pictures to our mind. I liked Elaine's acronym for COKE, which was calm, optimism, kindness, and energy. And I like Sarah's phrase, opposite sides of the planet. And all of these things put pictures in our minds and help let us know that words do create pictures and excitement and feelings. And so in that sense, we did a great job tonight, even though we didn't use our word of the day that often, but still we did a great job. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you very, very much again. True delight, a palate sensation, which I truly enjoyed. Before I go on to our watcher, I'd like to do two things. Part of this is just my own desire. I'd like to know, I've been wondering for a long time, how many of you watch the meeting in speaker format and how many of you watch it in the grid mode? So if you watch it in speaker format, if you just raise your hand for me, please. And if you watch it in grid mode, if you'd raise your hand for me, please. it's about 50-50. And I think that's something which we all want to think about when we are giving our speeches, particularly for visuals, is the simple question of what is it that people are actually seeing? So I wanted to ask that question. I'm also going to ask our watcher, BDC, if in addition to what he had intended to bring out, if he would mind telling us just a little bit about the use of virtual backgrounds to fit the theme for those people who use virtual backgrounds. Other than that, I will turn it over to his own discretion. Our watcher, BDC, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Michael. You know me so well. I was going to talk about this. Let's start things off. I like to do the watcher role in award show format. The winner of the best virtual background, because it had great contrast and their background was as crisp as their video was, Dr. Tasha. The best physical background, it was clean, it was colorful, it had depth to it, Susan with a period. The most scrumptious background, someone who really embodied the theme, I wanted to give it to Andrea, who had some really tasty fried eggs in the corner of the screen. It made me want to go at, but the tomato ruined it, buddy. No one has a tomato with breakfast. I'm going to give it to Graham because that's just a delicious little buffet of chocolate carbs. The person with the best lighting is so important, and you want to make sure that people can see you and they can really get your facial expressions. That's going to be the person whose lighting set a mood, added depth to their face, had some great shadows there. That was Jim Barber. The person who had the best framing, they did not plant themselves square in the middle of the frame. They moved over and over, and they allowed you to see other parts of what was going on. That was you, Dr. Michael Alexander. The best use of glass of water, I get this. We need to drink, and probably a lot of people were turning the cams off before they wanted to hydrate. But only one person was bold enough to drink on camera, and I want to congratulate her for being a hydro homie, the one, the only, Roxanne. And if you were turning off the profile camera, of course, I am going to look and see what does your profile picture look like? Because let's be honest, we want to see a smiling face. We want to see a positive face, something that makes it feel like you're still watching us. That was Marianne Grady. And last, the person who listened to me, took it to heart, had the most consistent, positive, vibrant smile the whole time. That is one of our guests, Catalina. I want to thank every single person who participated today because you brought it so that our speakers would have an audience to participate with. I'm going to pass it back to you, the General Evaluator, Mr. Dr. Michael Alexander.
Very good. And thank you for not making me reorder your initials just to prove to you that you got to get it right. Our chat monitor tonight was Monica Tucker. Monica, would you let us know how chatty we were?
Oh my goodness. We started off with some meeting links. So if you haven't saved your chat yet, go over to the file, the three little dots, and do the save chat. That way you'll have the links when we finish our meeting. And I learned some things tonight. I need to try Ethiopian food, and Truly Scrumptious was in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I never knew that. So I've got to go now watch that again. And during table topics, you guys blew it up. It was nonstop. And then, of course, Elaine added to that with the Coke and all the phrases and the slogans. So we had a really active chat. So if you save it, you can always go back and take a look to see if you missed anything. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the turnover. I love turnovers, sometimes torts, whatever, but whatever I can get. Mr. Vote Counter, would you tell us who our winners were today?
I can. I just want to confirm if everyone has voted.
Yeah, just a quick note on that, just to clarify that for the evaluations portion, all evaluators qualify.
Thank you. So has everyone voted, or do you want me to give you one more minute? Okay, so I'm going to announce the results. So best evaluator goes to Toastmaster Andre. Best, and yes, please applaud, please applaud. Best table topic speaker goes to Toastmaster Roxanne. Congratulations. And best speaker goes, well, not to me, because I wasn't speaking. It goes to Toastmaster Lieceng Zhu. Congratulations, madam. And over to you. Back to you, Mr. Journal Evaluator.
Thank you very much. Let me talk now about the general meeting. First of all, I love the fact that Online Presenter starts off with a good, friendly, welcoming setup. And Elaine, you do that marvelously. You really do. You have the facilitator skills, which I'm sure you use elsewhere as well. I really, really appreciate them very much. I think we had 3 very nice speeches. Carol, thank you for the background and whatever. I'm not going to duplicate what your evaluators have said, but nice background. I will comment a little bit on Lieceng because I think there's a general message to be reminded of for everyone who is a vice president of education everywhere across the world, which is that in theory, when you're doing an evaluation second time for your pathways speech, and it doesn't matter what path you're on, the evaluator, the second time you give the speech, should be the same one as the person who gave your first evaluation for that speech. That way you get proper feedback on how you responded to the evaluation. That is something I see violated all of the time. And so I'd like everyone who does that level of pathways to remember who gave them their first evaluation and share it with the Vice President of Education so that can be done properly. Nice speech. Elaine, I love that you came back. You didn't let it fall, you didn't let it fall through, and that was very important. Souffles can fall and you need something else to feed us. You did the same thing. Very, very nice. We had 3 marvelous evaluations, lots of excitement, lots of detail. I liked all 3 of them. They brought us, nice and clearly together. Lots of high energy, lots of suggestions, the sort of thing we should have. So again, marvelous with respect to that. As I look at the other functionaries, first thing I want to do is I want to compliment this club on the effective use of the chat to avoid reports which are not interesting to listen to, specifically the timer report and the counting. I frankly fall asleep when the normal counter gives a verbal report. Written down, I can look at it, see what I did, and that's very, very useful. Nice grammarian report. David, that was an incredible watchers report. Really, really nice. You watched everybody, you had suggestions, and I particularly like the fact that you commented on people's avatars, their fixed backgrounds, because too many of us forget about that and just leave basic words or not interesting, and I absolutely agree with you. The avatar should give us a feeling of who the people are and should make us feel interested.
Michael, sorry, I apologize. In the interest of time, in terms of closing the meeting, we're going to have to move on. However, if you do have particular comments for the watcher and the rest of the functionaries, please send them private messages, as we do want to close the meeting on time. I'm going to turn it over to Christian.
Very good.
I appreciate your flexibility.
Thank you, Mr. Journal Evaluator, for sharing. You're more than welcome to share after the meeting closes. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, for being on time. And that's very hard to do at times, but hey, we are advanced Toastmasters and we learn by doing. Thank you so much for doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you want to stay on for a few more minutes after we close the meeting, you're more than welcome to do that. I do have a few announcements before you start waving and uploading. The first one is we have had this habit of having a reserved Ask VP Education speaking slot over the last few weeks. Now, we're moving that slot back to open over the month of September and October. Why? Initially, that slot was set to allow club members to submit their speech requests on specific dates. Now, since that slot is not being used that much at the moment, we are opening it up, and after October, we will confirm if the slot will be permanently moved to open or moved back to reserved RSVP. So please watch out for that and book your speaking slots. Now, in terms of the education team, I need to say a big thanks and congratulations to Toastmaster Lucas and Toastmaster Roxanne for being part of the education team. They will be assisting us members and you, my dear members, to ensure that the education program is not only well managed, but to be of service to everyone in the club. An email will follow on this item. And by the way, Toastmaster Roxanne is having a workshop on the 17th of September at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's about retiring on purpose. It's a financial workshop from my perspective. I'm going to put that link in the chat. Roxanne, if you can help me, you can post a link there. You need to go and watch it.
I will, but I do want to correct you. It's not a financial workshop. We will not talk about money. So if you're hoping to get that, nah, that's not what this is.
Right, big mistake from my part, but
that's
all right. A lot of takeaways.
Oh, but come on now, you attended it. You know.
I attended it, but I've got a lot of items at my end, so I'm going to finish this and I'm going to close the meeting. Mentoring, remember, if you want to have a mentor, reach out to the person you're interested to mentor you, or let the VP Education team know. We'll help you there. And yes, we have an evaluation contest in October. We need a contest chair for that because the contest chair position is currently free. If you want to give it a try, let me know or sign up. And guess what? Next week is table topics contest, 21st of September. Put it in your calendar, book your slot. We are looking for judges. Yes, we need judges, and we need one more timer. And yes, there are still speaking slots available if you want to participate and test your mettle as a table topics participant. Under pressure. Ooh. No, it's not pressure. It's going to be fun. Sign up. We still have roles. If you're not able to sign up, let us know. We'll try to accommodate you. So look forward to that. And I hope you have a very good evening, morning, wherever you are. This is the end of the session and we're going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for coming. Take care.